I'm soaring, friends. I am Vitaly Portnikov. Now I want to vaccinate you all and with today's holy and not gidnost and freedom. With every one of you, I'm handing over another revolution at the border. I am highlighted for journalists. And richly who of the participants, there are famous revolutions of steel on the political ideas of grammar and writing, journalists. Those young people at that time still had the will of the new generation of Ukrainians to the supports. After all, there are such jackly in the exhibition system, then there is an extra communism. God be with you, I'm Bach on the maiden 2000 of the 4th lesson, and we are still shooting down proton sprats. And now there are 2000 of the 13th, 2000 of the 14th lessons in the maiden. And I want by Dyack and Skin, who boof on those revolutions. During the revolutions, I took Ukraine and the Russian Federation into rituals. He did not allow us to pretend our Bakovshchina with you to another Russian province. I also know those who take all kinds of part in revolutions. At a time, the counselor can still become the gateway to the Russian-Ukrainian guilt. That I am still Ukrainians, and you, then Putin did not attack either. And I would say a literal look at what happens on the truth from our Ukraine, from Russia at the remains, and there is still on the truth. We were worth the sovereignty of Ukraine, we have been in the stove for a long time, and I am not turning off the stove yet. I was spawned in the Kremlin for a cordon and a post. And there would be no tragic and bloody guilt. History, I'm like us of course, not knowing. There are facts on Reiki, and we are where we are. And today in our history, having become one of the greatest show-offs for the same for Russian-Ukrainian in May. That again you have a plan in Persia's wife in the political career of the president from those received in the state of Donald Trump. And before the speech in the political career of the Ukrainian president. "28 points of the Trump plan. And we have been sorting it out for a long time. Literally now our Oyster software can become both a chance for the celebration of combat days and a real political Easter for Ukraine. And today, as you know, all three participants of the drama, the main participants of the drama, have become famous. President of the United States Donald Trump, President of Ukraine Vladimir Zelensky, and President of Russia Putin. Donald Trump, Yak we are Bach. I adore Ukraine has also signed, and with the received states, and the planned Project Mir Ugadi up to 20 stops. Although the US president says that everything and you are kind, then the terms can and of course. On the was about the fact that the terms can be, and also means that you are on the was with your scope with Ukrainian President Vladimir Putin. And today, the Ukrainian president, diluting with Trump's greatest ally, the vice president with J. Divans received in the state. The minister of the army with the state received, find already sprat days in the Ukrainian. And one of the best associates and vice president. So we can say it again at a time, for the polar plan, for the track. The very team of the vice president from the received states, and I often visit the Trumpian honed, can change literally in a few days. Trump is a shield of my plans for propane, and absolutely scooped out to the fact that Russia, I respect all one thing, will conquer the entire territory of the Donetsk region. He will see reality. We have already said with you that I am still on because Russia will continue, and it has taken the pace of the offensive at a time. In the Donbass, it will occupy the entire territory of Donikin. The rocky sprat has ripened, and there is no ostensibly economical potential in Rakov. The current camp of Russia will not jump out from Putin. Putin adores Trump for the guilt, and obviously the kind of Ukrainian president. Of course she loves him. The American president also has reason to tell you today by implementing sanctions against the largest Russian NAFTA companies. And the pit chair has not yet chosen to get rid of the mountain water. Obviously, you respect that it can become very important to swim into the position of his Russian counterpart. And then I need to say, and the Russians will show me, I'm just a Russian story short. That's another Kola special sign of the president with the receipt of the Russian Federation, Kirill Dmitriev. Staying up with the received states and Bethany, and a special sign of the president with the received states, Steve Withov. It's obvious that Dmitriev himself went for the mayor's plan, and the Guardian journalists helped with the administrative analysis. Because she calculated the points of the plan even more richly, it's just tracing paper from the Russian site, that is. After saying these points, prescribed Russian and English was laid out. So Dmitri's Kale is still a plan of American love, and such a rank is handed over for the rights to sanctions that are careless for Putin against the main Russian NAFTA companies. And after all, these are the sexual ones for success. For one side, indeed, those sanctions were for Prova. Dmitri could not be thrown out of his main task. And the plan was accepted. Honed by Trump and requested by the president to dilute with the American president. So let's say like this, Dmitri in Porosia and the tasks of the Center for 50-100. Although it is obvious that Putin is ensuring that I just saw the Trump's Primus plan when hiring sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil in classes. And in the same place, Putin will be able to impose sanctions indefinitely to the fact that they will not be carried out by TP. Putin himself on the ladders has an imperious pascu to the fact that the quote looks like such a rank firm one side. We can continue the blame of the snake in the eyes of Trump on this yak, because Trump himself cobs his president on the landfill. You know, on the turn even with the cob, there was a completion in the fire. And for the same reason we do not know the situation is not for Anchorage. If the Anchorage summit of the president has changed absolutely in the pack to Putin's position from the cob of the mayoral year. The cob of the mayoral year has disappeared until it was possible, and the cob of the mayoral year has disappeared. And the dust of sanctions has disappeared until the moment when the mayoral years will not pull up. Sanctions against the Russian Federation can heal the rubble tough, supply the Russian economy with cooking water. And it starts with sanctions against Russia. To date, all of these Trump's wordings on the address of Ukraine look like a rough Trump ultimatum. We do not know. I will still be for Sprat. Because I have overgrown the initiative that European leaders can take on, I have not diluted it today. And with the President of Ukraine Vladimir, French President Macron, and the Prime Minister in Britain Keir Starmer, and the Federal Chancellor are not labeled Friedrich. Murty is now a blur. As far as I understand, there were split plans. Okolniki in Britain, unmarked France and Ukraine, even before that, I and the powerful propositions Propanovati Donald Trump. Today, Tesh performed before the Ukrainians of the bins of Gidnost and Freedom, the findings of the day of Gidnost and Freedom. His protrusion, sonically illuminated on the style of the day of Hydra and Freedom. Discounts Maybut Movanim with the American president with the drive of Trump's mayoral plan. And then I was talking about the fact that ready to meet with the president with the received states, Ukraine will not look like Ukraine. And still not allow the Russians to present Ukraine with the brightness of the power. I do not adore the mayor. And the reason was the red line for the sovereignty of Ukraine, as no one is elected to do in Kiev. And then, having said that Ukrainians are not easy to check, we ourselves are with you, I think this is perfectly understandable. Mish with sovereignty and Hydra, and a difficult winter in spending, is his most important ally for Ukraine. I've been like this since getting a staff. Honestly, I have not yet received the states will be ready like this solutions from Ukraine. And the fact that we are with you in a simple speech. Trump is still raging for the Nobel Prize. We, of course, that we are victims of his absolutely, I would say, Mornislavstvozak. And of course, it's perfectly practical, but not welding from Ukraine, and not Ukraine's surrender to Russia further away. Pretending Ukraine to be a Russian province, without exactly bringing him the Nobel Prize. And in order to become a real winner of the entire award, a real peacemaker, Trump Maya is known for guilt, so that Ukrainian sovereignty is erased. And it is extremely important to talk absolutely calmly about such actions. I am wasting Ukrainians and territories as you control with Ukrainian troops, and in protected places. Places, as she pretended to be on the planet of rich Russian-Ukrainian guilt. They began a narthex on Fortet, in the 2014 kind of Russia, with sabotage raids of their bandits. Up to the Kramatorsk number in January. But it is obvious that the whole situation is the future of Rita, and the European leader, and Trump, and Zelensky with Trump. Because in the most philosophical terms, the food is richly wondrous. And for me, I am an alarming moment, and those that are on the cob, that with the received states with Ukraine, are even more presented to Russia. In the subject I am different and logic. I respect the last 2 years. In May, it will be signed just between Ukraine and Russia. And with the receipt of the states, the dialogue of the two hostile Ukrainians is pleasant, so that they will not be able to pay for the commission received in the state. Who with the receipt of the states can all notify those who are from Ukraine, are not a joke, and compromise is already sanctioned, cotton wool. So Ukraine and litter and guess and process President Trump and his trash, that Russia is the aggressor, and Ukraine is the victim. And not yak not otherwise. And what are the real ideas, signatures, agreements with the states received from Ukraine? Because there can be a Russian Razruhu on it. Real Russian Razruk. Anyone else will be signed. I think you understand that perfectly. She is all one mats in the actions of the side of Ukraine. And so the President of Ukraine will appear, yaks of houses. Yaks so that otherwise they are tied up from the Russian-Ukrainian war and actions, and from the side of Ukraine. These actions are not appropriate for everyone in Ukraine. And in Russia, the reason for the act is not direct and you do not allegedly commit guilt. And for Balak, and often it happens even before Vera, before the president of Ukraine, I will write off for such piercing deeds. And you know that there will be a rumor that there was no action from my husband, and the fact that we are still Russians, all one thing on. And the Americans blackmailed us with supplies of dumping on European groves, and the exchange of intelligence data. And normally functional cotton wool. The Ukrainian army. Absolutely dissatisfied. I think that for Russia, one of the head styles I am a residual impulse to the Ukrainian Vera, to the Ukrainian Vlad I am to such. He can also go to the conflict between the Ukrainian media, Ukrainian Vlad, and the destabilization of the situation in Ukraine. To their troops, the gates of the Ukrainian region again. And about maybe the frequent plan between the Russian-Ukrainian plan of President Putin. I am the same as you know. Today I was worshipping even before the plan, having specially collected the Rada of Russia. And Tiara was broadcasting Putin's speech on the air, so that you would bachel him and speak on the topic. I am glad Putin, having seen Vyacheslav Volodin, the Speaker of the State Duma of the Russian Federation, and Trump, who was tortured with nuclear threats, so for Putin's sake I saw Valentin Matvienko, the head of the Chamber of the Russian Federal Fees, being tortured, and saying that Trump's plan was not discussed with the Russian side. That Ukraine's propositions document was a modernized version of the agreement. I looked at the president of the received states, Donald Trump, in Alaska, and Putin, saying that Russia is ready to compromise with the received states, and Russia is also ready to accept these plans until we are ready. The foundation for a Russia imperious, and the dynamics of the fighting ideas of our plots of land front. So the plan still has all the territories. A certain Russia has not written it down in its constitution. She's the weather with this plan. So again, I absolutely did not understand why Putin was so serious about talking about the cup. Primates are also being elected to the Trumpian plan. IK ambushes for a U Putin E. In principle, Privy says so. And why? Well, at least to the fact that Donald Trump again, and I say, that we are ready to start serious sanctions in plain sight. It is clear that it is not up to Russia, and it is possible to withdraw to sell Russian. Well, then in fact we are bucking the situation. Trump is going to turn thousands on Ukraine, and on Russia. And, of course, we can withdraw thousands of them to Ukraine from the president from the received states to richly bilsh. Niches from him can be conducted thousands of them to Russia. And so otherwise, we can talk about the fact that you are decadent from Ukraine. Trump can really be loaded with hundreds to hundreds of intelligence information. The one who is growling, and tied up by the very defense of Ukraine, in a fallout with Russia on our backside, is it turned off more economically? Is it important to swim? It's not so where Eve is, still talking about a short string perspective. Below Vasily swim. We understand perfectly well. Well, that is, in principle, this is a very difficult situation. The situation was brought to reason on discounts. Russia, in principle, was numb to Shvidka's mere idea. Trump's idea was just Shvidkov's idea of ending the guilt, and Shvidkov signing the measured ones. And why is everything the way you called for? I'm already talking about the process. Today, there are 20 Pershie of leaf fall. B's, diets, sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil. It is more serious in spending for the Russian budget. Spending can be knocked down along the way, but on the self-defense enterprises of Ukraine, the global Pernia and India, and on the People's Republic of China, the type of purchase of the Russian on. It is not known before Trump's sanctions for the very mechanism of their circumvention. I was effectively offended by the Russian Federation. Kola, as we are swearing, the situation was tied up from sanctions against Surgutneftegaz, this is Gazprom Neft. And Trump also says that there may be serious sanctions. That's the continuation of such a most important overestimate the moment even at the exit. To me honestly, in short, a shitty process. I'm already Bachev. The process of settling the guilt of the Bosniak. Absolutely our president, Democrat Bill Clinton. I surrendered richly less than Marno, the glorious and professional president is not Strump. And the methodology of American diplomats was absolutely such a shtick on both sides of the conflict, from one side to the Muslims. In Croatia at that time, the union with the Bosnian Serbs was still on the territory. Press and before Serbia vote on Zelezhnaya. And on Bosnian Serbia. Moreover, in the Bosnian territories, Serbia looks like the shelling of their positions. That their combat potential is not on the territory of Bosnia. And the Muslims of Croatia extorted to serious deeds. Acts tied to himself with the fact that small weather, that in the warehouse united to fight with the Bosnian Church. The Serbs from the ruling republic in the territories were ethnically cleansed of forces in the case of both Coffins and Dun, and people of the same nationality. Well, the Bosnian chain and the Bosniak warehouses are not on, and I allegedly do not give up, and it has become a power and a fatherland for them. The Bosnian sun is extremely taken in the brightness of his capital at Sarajevo and Belgrade. And all this will continue sprat and speech. And it's not the latters that are important to us and in such a Pascha. Because then the American diplomats in the icon at the stop of President Clinton and get the blame pull. And he himself entered into a dialogue with the president of Yugoslavia Slobodan Milosevic, allegedly the head of innovations, and the organizer of all technical cleaner, so Putin's yak I am the head organizer of Vinova on the post-conflict, on the post-uprising 25 Rocky. And I have no doubt that there were still riches in Bosnia ready to be persuaded. Tilke is still out of wine, Tilke still remembered about the blog shed. Tilke still showed up light and warm to the fact that they are veins of sprat rocky, in ripe, and human minds in different regions. And as a result, anything was revealed, absolutely undead, created a surrendered power and a non-functional institute. It does not develop richly. Below the neighboring Kalishnaya Yugoslav Republic, we are leaving young for ever not such prospects, and understanding will still be yes. And the whole and the territory of the repair will be heard in the warehouse. And the axis of Trump's plan is, of course, a pawn in the sprat, in the whole situation itself. Well, another C-plan sun praises, and as looking. In view of our speed, we will hear a power with an unspecified cordon. And the troubles? The fact that the conflict is frozen on the lines in the Zaporizhzhia-Kherson regions is rarefied by the Kilga into two parts. The two regions of Naki will all equally claim to be two powers in the constitution. It will be written down. So, we have to bring the Russians with the fact that there can be no treason by the temple gentry. And this means the preservation of the fortune, and the fact that the Russians are subject to the territories of Donetsk and Luhansk regions, and the administrative cordon of Chitko. I'm still going to be wrapped. The cordon is beyond the Paris and Kherson regions, and is not clearly intelligible. It will be an absolutely crazy story, of course. In Dnipro, there will be a ringlet of growth, and between two matches of shame, and Ukraine corroded by the Russian occupation. Ostensibly, of course, you want the Ukrainian Verkhovna Rada in the constitution there initially before NATO. I made ideological points there. They will extort Russians. It is already a Gromadyansky moment, expressing its independence of Ukraine. Allegedly, of course, the deputies of the Verkhovna Rada will be removed in the upcoming elections. I will also be off on the idea of still on fire. For 100 days, there will be all the elections. They are unlikely to have elections, and we are behind the wire, and all this is still extorting Russia. And I will look like a situation that is on Parliament, and not on you Stiga and Miranda. I will already be on the president, but you are deputies, no one will see for the old ones. Well, it can become a real problem for Putin. Process and who in the hall will sign all the documents. After all, she also spends literally 100 days after sewing up the wine. At a discount, you can still go to the Vic of Ukraine, wait, and it's down. And at a discount, you can guide someone else whose Revki of Ukraine will be ready to weather with a decorous mind and belittling. They will notify the Kola, which also means their political death. To date, the view of the Ukrainian Hromadyans for the years of the day of hydration and freedom. Wines have not exactly revealed such a banya, supposedly of course. So such a serious moment before, and we are not of course Pakshina, Yak, the situation looks like 4 sprat days. Here. In appearance, 4 sprat days, the song intelligence those situations with the Trump plan. You see that we are still catching on to the plan Sprat fought on in the presidential administration, with the one received in the state. 4 turns, obviously, in the bottom plan. For Mark Ruby, it was a tag of ideas, and I need to persuade and embroider more on the truth. For J. Devens, there was a nasty hardware imperious influx on both Trump and the situation for the Russian-Ukrainian guilt. And it is absolutely obvious that the Europeans have not said their word. Sticks even before Johannesburg, the British Prime Minister Kerstarmer arrived at the group of 20 Oyster and clearly said, "The principle that Ukraine itself appoints Maya to its Maybutton with imperious sovereignty is a fundamental principle." And the same absolutely obvious speech is tied from the Russian-Ukrainian guilt and put it for the dawn of Europe. But still, the contours, the wiring for the injection of the Trump plan, I think we need a one-time process. That's if I ask you to subscribe to the channel of those who have not subscribed to the ether, I will be in a hard-skinned new subscription. To what we are with you demo on the channel millions ended at 23,000. The figure is extracted, so the weasel is the fate of the challenges. I will be already in the diachnia, put in a Podobate comment. And I'm looking for them. The situation. On your thought with the wiring, and I will be in your diachno, but I'm on the types of Tanya. Yaki has already shown up for an hour. Our minds often sound. Yako respects, and through Ukraine protrusions, will stand up to the upcoming presidential elections with the money received in the state for. Even when the Moroccan side is included with the sale of Europe's reset. But I think that in Ukraine I will find it easy to expose to the fact that I am still talking about an acute conflict. We do not know about the scale of the conflict on Tiki from the Europeans. The conflict is so up to absolutely non-risky inheritances. I do not know about discounts from obtaining staff for these such situations, or even I will reset the sale in Europe. For the simple reason that I do not know how critical the situation is for the dropped forces of Ukraine in DAD. I am supplied with intelligence information in obtaining a staff by a Lyme expert. No one has told you that the president-elect with the state-obtained republic is in possession. I will continue this policy for Trump. You can't put everything in mind of a person right now. Still, according to Putin, we don't know all the buckets what the results of the US presidential election will be. That we don't know what the elections will be before the US Congress. The momentum of Ukraine is already in the 2026 kind, and the Democrats will also win the elections before Congress. We are still bashing Trump. It is unlikely that I am to such a Ukraine. The importance of his power choices stands for attack. Ostensibly, I respect this president for the SOAP agreement, which Trump has promised. Today, the president who spoke is ready to see the contract with the American president. Shukadi mind with European partners. I'm sure the whole situation will develop. And you and I do not understand, these infidelities will be adapted by the American side, accepted by the American side. And for discounts, such infidelities are forced to swim into the Russian position. And I respect in Zagalny even the mere year between the received states and the mere Ukraine. I respect the last few years, this Tilka Hugo, I will be signed by Ukraine and Russia. The president from the floor of the Russian Federation Putin, and the president of Ukraine. Declarations about Neymar. I'm a skinrazzer forums, other initiatives without Russia's teaching, including guessing and Tilki with Russia. With Russia, another 150,000 times in Russia is not guilty. Tilki one Thai attacked us. President Putin may be the fault of ending it, not like in those stories, not Putin can change his position. And Trump's economic sanctions, then you're still all stuck in the Kremlin. The fact that 145 plans and Trump will propane. And Putin with his plans, I will not continue all the styles, discounts from the president of the Russian Federation. And I will be pennies and adoration of wine. Well, it's elementary you don't pass. You sent out the cola in guilt, I will not pull it out in the 30s. And Zara will say I will still be in the 30s, that I swam in to replace your thoughts. Diakuyu? I am in the hall of Nicola, having punished that in the hot phase of wine, I will be in the 30th hands. I say that the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, but I will continue in the 30s, in the 20s. Because I am not I as an ambush for the dead bag between Russia and Ukraine in the situation of Russia on Tilka control. Often in our territory, she wrote down before her constitution, but she elects. Moreover, I do not think that you are from the primacy of blame, I and the fact that you and I do not have any understanding. There will be guarantees of Ukraine. Even with the received states will not give us a guarantee, the yaks will be on their own imperious readiness. to take a fate in the fault that Russia will attack us again. This is one story. Supposedly, of course. And the Europeans will also say Russia will attack again, we will fight. The fact that Russia is facing the threat of a nuclear conflict. And here we do not know, and I will choose for not the empire is important in a nuclear conflict. It is also possible that Russians are such idiots that they will wait. And with the fact that the nuclear guilt is unbent and not in the halls. And so not the head moments in those situations. And I will not be no guarantee of what it means I will not pull out. Russia has been reduced by sanctions, it is almost visible, whether it is an economical potential to sell both bilshi on cars. And in the fishing complex. And after 2 or 3 Rocky calmly attacking us to what we attacked or tops control. And in 2 or 3 years there will already be 2028, 2029th Rick, wine in the 30th. And why doesn't he see this? Why don't you think that there can't be a keel between Russia and Ukraine? Russian-Ukrainian guilt, but a friend, and that we can't be like that. Ukraine will have the potential, we will be up to the defense, and up to us, and we will know that the occupation is frequent on our territory. They will know that we control on frequent, and Kherson are turned. So it can be, in their head, in their ideology, that respects that they will become buckets and plump. And to sew up Ukraine, we are both Ukraine, and can go through the temple Zasubi to economical, to political and political foundations. I don't think it's going to be quiet here. And on repeat, we will also have purges of guarantees. And we will put the light wars and political maps of the retinue of Washington and Moscow on the verge of the third one. And I'm not in a guarantee to look like that. I respect that Russians can stream, and Tilky can be taken out of 150 million people now. Of nuclear guilt. Persia on need with the received staff of a friend on need of Russia. Still extorting Russia, we have not yet joined NATO. And Trump says, okay, we will not join NATO, it will be fixed in the legislation, and is afraid of wheezing in the NATO statute. Although I do not know the yacht. I'm still attacking them, the American army will fight for them, and the European army will fight for them. It shows, so the chips are cut out, then it is visible. The same Gersha is not married, because I am still attacking Ukraine, a NATO member, the whole of Ukraine. Extorting the asset of these articles the 5th, and sweat within the framework of the 5th article, to praise decisions, to fight and to whom. And then you start right automatically. Oh, in your opinion, I will be negative heirs for Trump at the time of his 28-leaf fall. I don't think I'm going to add Nadava. I don't think there will be any negative ones. Trump chewed on us and us intelligence. That your flagging scandals in the Oval Office. There were no bright airs for him. What the West respects also exhales. I am yes. I respect why a lot of people around the world continue to sympathize with Russia. Closing Chechnya are taken seriously on the late Russia and the like. But it happens in different ways. The halls are full of ideological views and people are put up before sunset. With a rich and ideological myth, Russia was revealed to have been deceived by her entry into spent her reference territories. And pegged often on me, she so set out to develop. And revealed herself armed to territories and overwhelmed by Americans and so on fighting from those Ukrainians. Such as in Poland and the Czech Republic, whose NATO is worse than Russia. So what is the reason why this is so? I just divided the retinue to the West, and the West still wants. With a completely different and valuable reference point, from a completely different memory about history. The plague, and Ukraine standing in this right to join NATO, still NATO, and my adoration of us primates. To pass not with NATO, so skin-feeding time. In the USA, it is already called, and life has not been with NATO. NATO is overstated by a single defense alliance on the territory of Europe. The title: Ukraine may not stand in the Donut Stupa. This is again so and torture, as there will be guarantees for Ukraine. Without real guarantees of Ukraine, you can visit Russia's chicks for a rocky sprat and finish. And I haven't seen you richly yet. Now I will no longer have a clear understanding of the ailing places of everyday life, so that I will face the power. For a short sprat reset, and prepare for a new guilt for the removal of Ukraine. Russia is coming by prescription. I guarantee you. And once again I repeat that it will be with a guarantee, and extremely all the fault can be with us Zagom. I will say we will bend there, but with the participating Ukrainians. The torture will be guaranteed, and allegedly do not look like it. And the fact that NATO, and the overstated Diug guarantee on the territory of NATO, has not yet come to the Russian military service. Drones and NATO's hybrid guilt. And you yourself, of course, what we are going through, and we can still live without guilt, and still hybrid guilt, and Ukrainians live today. I think you should sit this down. So the guarantees in the ship are overstated by the birth test. Rank from the direct idea of the United States to what is in Russia. Respecting the fact that you prefer serious problems in the economy in 2026 of the sixth kind, and, of course, a blow to the automotive industry complex of the Russian Federation. I, Sasha, think that torture is the one in Trump's Nobel Prize. Adoration in Eurobit is something economical with Russia. It's you in the hall, still economically Trump's policy to the grave, and all who can, and who can be found, and Pograbov. And there are also ideas with Russian and frozen assets, and 100 billion of them will be allocated for use outside Ukraine. Because of such halves on May 5 Trump, the pennies received by the states for guarantees disappeared. So I don't think it's propo. Even before you notice serious problems in the economy of Ukraine and Russia in the 2026 kind. I can feel the forecasts of the lying economists right now. I want to tell you that we feel these forecasts even personally. I will punish that serious problem. I am the one who punished me, it can't be in the 2025 kind. What's at 2020? Let's say 2026, and in 2026 kind, the Russian economy will not collapse. And the energy sector of Ukraine will already be in convulsions. And we will be chicotti with the Ostra of the winter of 2026-2020, and maybe Zhazamu. And the leading Russian economy will collapse in 2020. But you also can't put a calendar date for the collapse of the Russian economy. We don't know on these at a time with sanctions. Adoration is unreal once. So I respect. I love it. So that those sanctions were div. And we do not know who the creator is with Russia. Fake companies will sell Russian nafta. The mechanisms of the shadow fleet will be affected, and they will have already filed. And I will still be for drinking a hand, at least knowing the Russian one. Through Russia killed in real talk, and about 2024, to the fact that I will continue in the date, and sell NAFTA Ukraine Global Pub. Through the Kiel Commission. Of course, Trump doesn't know anything, and everything will turn out. That Biden is right to such sanctions for Trump, which is both the case, and the fact that Biden will beat everything on the national market. Respecting that as a gift for the electoral chances of democracy, and a friend for Ukraine. What? The elections in the hall about Ukraine? I will still be, of course, still on gasoline. The same argument, I grew up. Kirill Dmitry came to the received in the state. That we don't believe anything, that you are sanctioning our NAFTA, but you can smell it at your gas stations. So I'm afraid of Biden in the pre-election period. And I'm afraid that maybe you are on the Republicans and in Congress in order for us to have serious problems, as you mark. And it happened to her hands. Anyway, the Republicans are hunting for active demand. And I want to tell you what Biden is for: seeing off sanctions against Surgutneftegaz and Gazprom Neft. Naphtha companies have revealed that Russia can also bypass sanctions. No one has said what kind of repetitions. We say that the sanctions of the idea we are with. What's in the idea? What to pour everything on about China. The plague and his words patron of Russia. Well, the Chinese patron of Russia. China is allied, a strategic ally of Russia. And China yesterday at a meeting of the UNRWA for a fang to Russia and Ukraine before Shvidka. Only Trump is getting ideas. And on China mind is not added in mind, I will help Ukraine, Russia. And in China, the mind is also overgrown with actually a stitch with the chances of its own at cell phone enterprises, and you add that they bought Russian NATO, even on the latter, the second ones are not sanctions. So I'm already saying that I was just getting numb, not so that the blame would continue on Vaga. You can do this like this: I Trump for which Russia, Ukraine lost to China, something that overestimates the lax and everyone. And I do not know how much in the audience I am a real video can change the situation. And I love to change this situation. I'm on the Hall's option for Trump, whose sanctions are to be dropped for Ukraine. You are for nothing. I am not a sanctions policy. And temples will help for Ukraine with the worn-out serious Russian energy facilities. On carpooling, poti such as at Novorossiysk. It's in vain that you overestimate the pre-bomb and missiles at the auto assembly plant, and no one has said that these are Shvidki Shli. And no one saying something like not completed between Russia and Ukraine. I will decide. This is the president-elect with the staff received. And Trump wants what will happen, and so that his plan was hastily written by the Russians with a political soy in Ukraine. And Trump's channels will try to sell it. And a similar torture than their corruption scandal in Ukraine, as if they are still being attacked in Russia, like an hour for revenge. Well, the counselor is still being attacked in Russia, so that seriously changed the situation in themselves, is our friend with the reality below. Dmitry in the 24th 20C received in the States was not as corrupt. Like this. So I think that knocking down is not careless for us. Nothing good is not because we extremely wanted the whole situation to be so different. And the understanding that the main idea of the plan was his most publicly up to 20 about sanctions against Russia on the corruption scandal in Ukraine. And what Trump greedily marks, don't ever talk about the corruption scandal in Ukraine, something from his official and niche. Trump, you are now scooping up a corrupt Ukraine. So I think the prices of what real reason I could have surfaced on the date, and all of this was definitely. I just think that in those situations, sanctions are already for failures. That Putin will be bilch malleable, topping up the end in the fire. Once on the date, Trump will still pull him out of the Europeans. That Putin in the minds of sanctions can be and bilch then to dates. 20 ideas of these sanctions. Trump did not bend. These sanctions 4 wires have been seen, perhaps, in Gersh for Russia, but for a friend, the option of 2025th lesson. On the 26th lesson, I last closed the short list of candidates for the Nobel Prize to the mayor of 2026. But we are with such realities, and with such adoration, and Trump on helping, and such management with the received in the state. Do not require shukadi, gut in the dark, and there is not just a need for infection, and simple speech. Well, I still want the plan to be a conspiracy, and bring real snakes into it, the process, and with Trump, Starmer will talk. I will also speak to Macron. The devil is the president of Finland, Alexander Stupa. Here in an absolutely real snake position. You can see that Trump is deaf firm a position in the situation. We are going to complete our today's sweep. Trump, right in the Oval Office of the Mayor of New York, paid tribute and cola to Trump. Made another Madani cola on the landing of the Mayor of New York, calling him a tyrant despot. Trump, saying that he was called both richly Gersh and not so filthy. And it's also a joke that the new Mayor of New York will change his mind, after we have to bring out the mind against it. And I'll tell you another literally Sprat is not in it. Trump, having called the Mayor of New York in Maiden a worthy communist, is immersed in the temple in New York Tacha. So in the dark plan, and it is absolutely obvious, that trying to get discounts, in a really implemented way looks like. This is a valid framework for consultation. And Trump, absolutely everything is still going to be signed as a result. Tilke it made known, Trump is absolutely not about Ukraine. You are not in the subject of Trump. For Israelis, I am Vera Trump. Israel's laser Trump is simply for Israel and Saudi investments. Yes, Saudi Arabia, or maybe the strategically famous Maybit, can be brought to Israel in the sky. It's just that he wants to name $600 billion of Saudi investments, and billions are trillions. That's the whole psychology. And this means that Trump was not notified that he needed to get a real result from a situation tied to Russian-Ukrainian guilt. And it will be, and exactly tied to the result, with some Ukraine with a political map. We bury it in the head. You can also tear off the Nobel Prize to the mayor. Yak was with the pleasure of Vietnam. And according to Ukraine, I have been drinking, and Vietnam has been turning the beer Vietnamese bandits into communists. I'm behind everything eaten Vietnam. That is, the goal for us is not that I blame, and give out $1 million to Yang, to share a share in millions. Millions and $1 million in Saigon, and at a time called Hashiman, I just kicked them out of the visible place, after it was occupied by a communist, and threw Sprat Rocky after it was signed the soapy water, and the sovereign secretary with the intelligence received in the state of Henry Kissinger, and a member of the Vietnamese Politburo beer hall, and the kid the Nobel Prize mayor. Dai Kuyu. I will be with you. Important stitch for the situation. Let's talk about the coming days. I ask those who have not subscribed to the channel, sign up. Become the millionth. Sign of the channel has ended with only 23,000 in the channel. Put millions in the feed, comment. Channel tools and reset the forces of Ukraine. Collection. Here we do not know that for today on my old Facebook page, let's say, there is a post of such a collection, I also ask you to get to it. And in the Instagramist of such a collection, are important for the Ukrainian temples of the past of Vagu, and yes to people. Protects us. There is still the reset forces will overestimate the full guarantor of Ukrainian sovereignty at the time in. Yes, still prip on him in the fire on the Russian-Ukrainian front. Believe me.